Good afternoon. My name is Mr. Unich. As Mr. Body said, I'm the Associate Director of Communications and Digital Media Manager at Landon. I'd like to thank Ms. Krein and Mr. Body for inviting me to speak today. The great scholar Ozzy Osbourne once sang, "Crazy, but that's how it goes. Millions of people living as foes. Maybe it's not too late to learn how to love and to forget how to hate." Perhaps a somewhat misunderstood and hard to understand, Rocker had a point. Forgetting to hate is difficult. There are many things that can make somebody different. Color of your skin, the religion you practice, your gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status. And for the most part, these differences are not apparent when you look at somebody. Bigotry, racism, discrimination, and anti-Semitism are still prevalent in America and around the world. There are stories in the news all too often about hate speech, suicide bombers, fire bombings, arson, vandalism, assault, and the defacing of synagogues and churches. Unfortunately, discrimination against African Americans and Jews is not a new phenomenon. During the 1930s, anti-Semitism was running rampant in the United States, and blacks faced severe segregation. In 1933, the same year Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, the Ku Klux Klan was coming off a period when they had as many as 6 million members. The Klan still exists today, but its membership has rapidly declined to about 5,000 people. Other white supremacist groups also have emerged. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the Baltimore Country Club had a sign that read, "No dogs, no coloreds, no Jews." And that wasn't the only club to post a sign with that sentiment. As recently as the 1990s, Jews and blacks were not allowed to join many country clubs. One report indicated that Indian Country Club near Miami had exactly one Jewish member as recently as 2000. That's only 13 years ago. Although it's widely considered the world's oldest monotheistic religion, Judaism is often misunderstood. There are approximately 5 million Jews in America, only 2% of the country's population, and about 14 million Jews around the world, approximately 0.2% of the world's population. Most Jews live either in the United States or Israel. In other words, there are more people living in New York City than there are Jews in the United States. All the Jews in the world are outnumbered by the populations of California, Texas, New York, and Florida. Christianity is practiced by about 3/4 of all Americans, making it hard for Judaism to be recognized in many areas. For example, Hanukkah gets a lot of publicity because of its proximity to Christmas, but it's not even a major Jewish holiday. Being Jewish isn't easy, and I speak from experience. There have been many times in my life when I couldn't attend an event because it fell on a Friday night, which is the beginning of the Sabbath. The people who invited me didn't always understand my reasons for declining, and quite frankly, didn't really care. The Jewish Sabbath begins just before sundown every Friday night and ends at nightfall every Saturday. For 25 hours every week, I take a ritual break from my daily life. My computer and my iPhone remain off, I don't spend money, and I don't do any work. The best description of the Sabbath I've heard is that it's an island in time. This is how Sabbath observant Jews unplug. These Sabbath guidelines are derived from 39 categories of prohibited work outlined in the Talmud, which is a text that describes many aspects of Jewish practice. This includes writing, cooking, planting, spending money, and lighting a fire. This also means that people don't drive or use electricity on Sabbath. Additionally, there are 5 major annual Jewish holidays where work is forbidden, although cooking is allowed. These are Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, which is a 25-hour fast that is the holiest day of the year, Sukkot, Feast of Booths, Passover, celebrating the Exodus from Egypt, and Shavuot, the celebration of receiving the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, on Mount Sinai. The first 3 fall in September or October, while Passover occurs in March or April, and Shavuot takes place 7 weeks after Passover. If you include all these days that has some kind of work prohibition, it totals 65, which is approximately 18% or nearly 1/5 of the year. Take a second to think about how your life would change if you didn't go out to a restaurant, party, game, concert, or another event on a Friday night or Saturday afternoon. Add to that 13 other days when you stayed home from school or work, but still had to make sure that all of your assignments were completed on time. Another observance that is important to me is keeping kosher, following the Jewish dietary laws. The word kosher can be translated as ritually fit. The Jewish dietary laws, which are primarily described in Leviticus chapter 11, require the separation of meat and milk and limit which animals, and by extension their byproducts, can be consumed. Examples of kosher foods include beef, chicken, salmon, tuna, and flounder. Non-kosher foods include pork, lobster, scallops, and catfish. Additionally, supervision by a rabbi or another properly trained authority is required from the time an animal is ritually slaughtered to the moment it is packaged or served in a restaurant. Because of the separation of meat and milk, kosher kitchens typically have two sets of dishes, one for meat meals and one for dairy foods. Dining at restaurants or eating at Landon can be a challenge. Oftentimes, it's easier to inform people that I'm a vegetarian than it is to launch into an explanation of the Jewish dietary laws, which, as you can tell, are extremely complex and easily misunderstood. Judaism requires a lot of dedication and sacrifice, but for many people, it's well worth it. While I do not observe every Jewish law in the Torah, there are 613 of them after all, I do keep kosher and observe the Sabbath and holidays in my own way, which probably could describe many observers of numerous religions. An important sentiment in many religions, cultures, and societies is love your neighbor as yourself, which was first mentioned in Leviticus. No matter the color of your skin, the religion you practice, your gender, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status, we're all part of the human race. And we should all treat each other with respect, despite or because of our differences. Peer pressure is unfortunately too strong a force in today's society. It's easier, especially in middle school, to just go with the crowd and blend into the masses. If somebody invites you out to an event, the easiest choice is to say yes. If you are offered something to eat, it's simpler to just consume it. It's hard to speak up and voice your opinion. It's difficult to be different. But that shouldn't matter if something is important to you. Don't sit quietly. Be proactive. Don't be an idle bystander if something wrong is occurring. It's your responsibility to say something, to be an upstander. Witnessing an injustice and not doing anything is unacceptable. If you observe somebody being bullied or teased, it's important to come to their defense in a peaceful manner. It doesn't matter whether you know them or not, it's your responsibility to help your fellow bear, neighbor, friend, or anybody else. If you see someone who needs support, offer your time and energy. If you see something that makes you uncomfortable, witness bigotry, discrimination, or something that violates Landon Civility Code, tell a faculty member, Ms. Krein, Mrs. Sears, Mr. Berthet, your form's dean, or another adult. As another intellectual, Lady Gaga, famously sang, whether life's disabilities left you outcast, bullied, or teased, rejoice and love yourself today, because baby, you were born this way. Her song, which has become an anthem to some, encourages people who have been labeled different to be themselves and be proud. Discovering your similarities with others ultimately leads to closer relationships, and it will make you a stronger and better person. In fact, I'm willing to bet all of us in this room and across Landon's campus have several things in common. I'll start. I like to eat, cook, attend sporting events, visit with my friends and family, and watch TV. I'm also touched when people recognize my birthday or simply say hi when we cross paths. By a show of hands, how many of you agree with at least two of the things I just listed? While that inventory is somewhat basic, it's the beginning of a longer process of learning more about students, faculty, and staff. I challenge all of you to discover what you have in common with each other during the course of the school year. By June, you'll know more people and have a broader knowledge of new things. Hopefully, this will lead to a deeper understanding of your fellow Bears. Now I'd like to quote another philosopher, John Lennon. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. As you go through this discovery process, I'd like to invite any of all you to come visit me or send me an email. My desk is located in the communications office on the second floor of Andrew's house. I'm also listed in the Landon directory and on the Landon website. Whether you have a specific issue in mind, have unfortunately faced a type of bigotry or anti-Semitism, want to ask questions about anything, or simply want to chat, I look forward to hearing from you and getting to know many of you better. Let's spend the 2013-14 school year turning differences into similarities, weaknesses into strengths, and barriers into bridges. Thank you very much.